Hi, this is Warner Crocker, GottaBeMobile.com, coming to you with another GottaBeMobile.com Ink Show. And in today's Ink Show, we're going to be talking about, yep, you guessed it, the iPad. I'm going to be giving you a little bit of a review to go along with the written review that I'm going to publish with this. Actually going to break things up into several parts here because there's a lot to cover. Not just because it's the iPad, but because, well, this is supposedly heralding the dawn of the tablet or slate era here. Era, not error. So we'll do that. But before we get started, we'd like to give a big shout out and a big thank you to the folks at Mobile Demand. They make rugged tablet PCs. If you're looking for a rugged tablet PC or some rugged gear, give the folks at Mobile Demand a call and a shout out. Let them know that the gang from GottaBeMobile.com sent you. We'll be happy. They'll be happy. We'll be able to keep doing these ink shows. Okay, the iPad. I've had this now since Saturday. It's Thursday night as I'm taping this here in my office at the theater. I am impressed. I think we have something that's really kind of nice and kind of wonderful and does indeed speak to the future. It's a Generation 1 device. It's got some issues. Every Generation 1 device has some issues. But I think this is indeed pointing to a new kind of computing device. Those of us who are tableteers, been dealing with tablet PCs for quite some time, know what slates can do, know what tablet PCs can do. And I think this does point the way in a big way here. So what I'm going to do is show you some of the things that I'm attracted to, some of the things that I think are kind of weird, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through this ink show. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about is just touch. Now this is a touch device, okay? Forget inking if you're, or hoping somewhere, somehow. I've gotten, I don't know how many emails from people saying, please tell me if you can ink on this device. The answer is at the moment, no. It's a capacitive touch screen and there's no palm rejection. So you put your palm here to write, you're going to get all kinds of crazy ink all over the page, no matter what you're doing. I know the folks at Evernote are saying if they're going to try to provide inking, I don't know how they're going to deal with that other than maybe put a glove on your hand or something like that. We've seen some folks try that with a glove or with a piece of fabric or that kind of thing, but it kind of defeats the purpose. So it's a capacitive touch screen. Now, let's go back to the days of UMPCs. Remember the Asus, the Samsung, the tablet kiosk. The thing about those, you held them in two hands, and here on the bezel, we had controls and buttons. The later generation Samsung UMPC put a keyboard there because, of course, people said, hey, we need a keyboard. And of course, that keyboard was really faulty. Well, this doesn't have anything like that. This has the screen. And what's taken me a while to kind of wrap my brain around here is using this two-handed, whether I've got it here in landscape mode or whether I've got it in portrait mode. And let me just show you what I mean. I'm going to bring up my email here. Now I'm going to go back over here to landscape mode. Well, I can work this way with this column, and I can also work this way simultaneously with this column. I don't know if you can see that scroll, but maybe I'll get closer there together. I'm going to also bring up a web page here. Let's go to one of my favorite websites. Anybody want to guess what that is? GottaBeMobile.com? Yeah, how about that? Same thing. We can scroll right up just using my thumb here on this right side. And that works really handily. When I first got this, what I was trying to do, thinking perhaps along the lines of the iPhone or the iPod Touch, is I was holding this and then with one hand and then using the other hand to scroll. Well, I don't need to do that. This can work with both hands on this very well. Again, similar to those early UMPCs where we had all those controls on the bezel, touch at that time just wasn't ready for that kind of activity. We didn't have capacitive screens on those early UMPCs, or for many of the later ones, as a matter of fact. That, I think, is one of the things that sets this device apart, is just how easy it is to use. When I put this in my nephew's hand, he was immediately doing that. Put this in my mother's hand, she was immediately doing that. Very fascinating as far as that's concerned. When you're working with this device, it does take some getting used to. I mean, it took me, and admittedly, with my mother's ill health, my brain wasn't really on working with the device. But I carried it with me, and I was trying to use it as my only device when I had the opportunity to do that. It took me a couple of days to get used to dealing with that, because when I'm using the iPhone, it's here resting in these fingers, and I'm working with my thumb here, okay? Everything is happening there. Occasionally, if I flip things over into landscape mode, I'll be doing this, or I'll be doing this kind of action. Well, one of the things that I've seen a number of people talk to, and I think this is going to be a big determining factor about whether this device becomes a device where people create content on or not. I think the mechanisms and the design is there for that to be the case, but it really depends on your hand size, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. I just brought up Pages here, okay, and I'm going to see if I can bring up the keyboard. Here it is in portrait mode. Let me get a little closer to the screen here. Now, I've seen some folks say that this reach across the bottom with their thumbs is pretty easy for them to do. And, it's not bad for me. It's not accurate for me. Okay? It just doesn't work in my situation. Now, let's come back over here to landscape. Forget about this thumbing. Okay? Unless you just have amazingly long hands. It's just not going to work, in my opinion, for those who have smaller hands or medium-sized hands. I think my hands are kind of medium-sized hands here. So whether this becomes a document creation or a creative device for you in that context as a touch device is really going to depend on how you interrelate with the device. The design and the mechanism is here, like I said, but it's all about how you feel about the device, which again harkens back to the early days of tablet PCs and just how personal those devices were. We used to say all the time they put the personal back into personal computing. Now, of course, you can, if you want to do some creation, you can hook up a keyboard, and I am delighted that I was able to bring out of retirement the old iGo stowaway Bluetooth keyboard here. Hope you had a chance to check out that earlier ink show that I did of that many years ago. It's a great keyboard, and it works like a charm. Here I've got the iPod dock that just arrived the other day after I got back from being with my mom. It's heavy. In many ways it almost feels as heavy as the iPad, excuse me. But if you put this here and pair things up, this can work really, really well. I don't need to feel a need to go out and purchase one of Apple's Bluetooth keyboards, or I'm sure they would love me to, but this has a command key here. So it pairs up and it works really, really nicely. I've been able to actually do some typing in Pages with this and feel very, very comfortable about that. So that's one way that you can use this. But, on the go, that's another story. Now, I typed up quite a bit using my fingers, and you can't really see down here in my lap the way I've got the camera set up here, but let me take this out of the dock for just a second. If I've got this here, laying this flat in my lap, boy, that just doesn't work for me. Maybe my lap just inclines towards the floor naturally with my little short stubby legs, and I am certainly not gonna be one of these folks that puts my foot up on the desk here or my feet up on one of those ridiculous angles to work with this. Part of that reason is this thing is moving back and forth, so that doesn't work for me at all. So I think a case or a stand of some kind that gives you an incline is a must. Now, I had purchased a case from InCase. It was actually a case and a stand because it could flip over, and it gave me a slight incline here, and that was relatively successful when I was on a hard surface. But the weight of the iPad, 1.5 pounds, remember, it kept sliding out of the enclosure to a point where if I wanted to access the charging port or the headphones up here, they were covered up. So I returned that. I ordered one of Apple's cases which also flips around. That's on back order, so we'll have to wait to get that as far as that's concerned. Let me show you, get closer to the the camera, and show you a couple of things with some of the apps here. Hopefully Wi-Fi is going to hold out. Interestingly, some folks are reporting this Wi-Fi issue you may have heard about. I had no issues at home. I had no issues when I was down in Richmond at the hospital with my mother, or at my sister's house with their Wi-Fi. Here in my office, in the afternoons, will see Wi-Fi disappear, or it will ask me for my logon again, which leads me to believe that it might be an issue with certain routers. I don't know that to be the case. I don't know enough about that. But let's see here. I'm going to bring up the Netflix app here for you and show you that. Now, this app to me is just killer. Again, we're streaming over Wi-Fi, and we should be seeing something happening here shortly. And I think this is one reason for many folks to go and purchase one of these for a consumption device. In just a second here, as we stream in, we should be seeing a little bit of Being John Malkovich. We're right at the beginning of the movie there. Now, I've watched a movie and a half this way, staying up late at night, being very, very tired, just so I can find out how well this works. And I have to admit, it works really, really well on Wi-Fi. I'm anxious to see what happens with that when we get it on 3G, though. Who knows how that's going to work. Here's the Amazon Kindle app. Let's go ahead and flip this around as it loads in. Interesting. There we go. And as you can see here, it looks like we've got this on the page. We can bring up the controls this way. We can pop back here to the home screen. You can see it's in full color there. These are some of the books that I have in my library. Excellent app. Let's go back here to this particular book and just flip through some pages that you can see here. Notice you don't get a page turn, or the mimic of a page turn, if you will, like you do with iBooks. Of course, that's going to come up on its store. I haven't gone and purchased a lot of books. I did purchase one. Here's the Winnie the Pooh book that came with it. Wow, that's exciting. This is Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, and you can see here that you get a mimic of a page turn as you scroll across, as far as that's concerned. Difference between these two apps, you get some of the Kindle features that you have on the Kindle, or in terms of bookmarking and things, that you don't have with the iBooks app. Some of that, it depends on your usage, depends on how you're going to be reading books, as far as I'm concerned, but both work really, really well. I've now got two of these apps here on my iPad. I'll probably be putting the Barnes & Noble book reader on here as well, as far as that's concerned. But I love the fact that the Amazon Kindle app is on this, because I've got not a lot, but a considerable amount of invested already in Kindle books. I read a lot of those on my iPhone, read a lot of those on my Kindle, which I got much later than phone. So that's something to consider. Whether I'll be purchasing a lot of iBooks, it's going to be interesting to watch the price wars on all of that. Now, something else that I think is kind of interesting in the UI here. We're in portrait mode. Now, look at the icons here. We've got numbers, iBooks, Kindle app, Netflix, and down here we've got iNapkin. Let's rotate this around. Notice that the position of the icons change. Now, I'm getting used to this, but initially I found that very, very disconcerting, simply because my motor memory, if you will, or muscle memory, gets used to where certain things are on the screen. And if I'm saying, hey, I want to call up this, I'm going to that place. But if I happen to be holding it in a different orientation, that place may have shifted. And I still have not quite adjusted to that fact. Some people are saying, well, it's adapting to how you're holding it. Great, maybe so. But, if I'm in a hurry to find something, I want to find it. Okay, and you know, it's interesting. On the iPhone, in my experience, you know, you get on those jogs one day where you say, you know what, I'm going to clean some things up, get rid of some apps that I don't want to use. You know, just how you clean up your desktop on your computer on your desk, that kind of thing. And you know, you move some things around, and you find yourself going back to those old locations. Well, again, I've had this. It's Thursday. I've had this since Saturday, but I find myself not liking how that works. Now, of course, I could lock the screen into one rotation with this switch right here on the side, but that doesn't make any sense to me unless I'm in some apps. Now, one of the things that I think was an amazing feat of marketing or flim-flam, confidence game, whatever, that Apple pulled over on all of us, was how they said, oh, well, hey, we've got 150,000 apps ready right out of the box for you to run. Not quite. Now, admittedly, there have been quite a few apps that have updated for the iPad, and we've even got some new apps for the iPad. I love the developers who do the universal situation where the app works on both the iPad and the iPhone or the iPod Touch. That's fantastic. But if you're looking at some apps that are iPod or iPhone only, that's what you get here. You get this small screen. This is the Flickr app, and it should be loading in some pictures there. Well, that's great if I want to look at it like this, but down here I have this 2x button. If I hit that, it's going to pop up. Now, this app doesn't look all that terrible in that situation, but you take an app that is dealing with a lot of text, and I'm just here to tell you, it just looks awful. Let's take a look at Foursquare. Okay, I haven't logged into this here yet because I'm just not pleased with it, but you can see the text is really fuzzy here, and as are the images, and some of these are worse than what I'm showing you here because, quite honestly, I've deleted a lot of them off of this. It's just not worth it. Compare that to a text-heavy app like Instapaper, which is something that I use here. That's just very easy to read and quite gorgeous. You know, Instapaper allows you to save something on your desktop or your notebook, and you can save it for later reading. And I do this quite frequently with articles of things that are relatively long or things that I want to hang on to read at a later time. But this is wonderful. And again, here we've got a situation where I can be working in this mode here. I love how the UI works and turns with that. Now, not all native iPod, iPhone apps suck, in essence, when you deal with that. Some of the games actually look pretty nice. Let's bring up Peggle here from PopCat. That was very big and very... This doesn't look too bad. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and do a quick play so that you can see that. I don't even remember how to get into this game. Okay, adventure. There we go. This actually looks pretty nice, and I used to play this all the time at one point on my iPhone as a diversion. So works out pretty well there. I mean, it's not the sharpest thing that you're looking at here from the graphics, but it doesn't look horrendous like some of the others. But I'm amazed that Apple conned all of us who blog and the journalists into buying that, hey, we got all these apps ready-made to go without ever having a chance to look at them here, because there are some that, in my opinion, are just absolutely hideous. Have no business, using that as a selling point, I guess, is the best way to go. One of the things that I think is going to be the big determining factor here in terms of how people use these devices, because I think they are very personal devices, is down here the springboard. Okay, we have out of the box Safari, Mail, Photos, and iPod. But let's go over here to this page there, scrolling through. Of course, I could have hit the home button to deal with that. Let's say that Evernote is an app that I use all the time, which it is. I can put it right down there. I can put up to 6 icons across here on the springboard. Okay, this is what, looking at this on someone's iPad is going to tell you how they use this device. You're going to see, for folks who are trying to be productive with this device, a lot of productivity apps down here. You're going to see folks who perhaps use it primarily as a media consumption device. You may see the Netflix or the Kindle app down here. But I think in the future, looking at folks' iPads, what's on the springboard is going to determine a lot about how someone wants to use this device. Okay. One interesting little thing here, Apple is huge with its big ecosystem, the iTunes store, music, now apps. Now we've got iPad apps, iPod Touch apps, we've got iPhone apps, we've got books, you name it, it's all those things. Of course, books is a separate store to deal with that. Back when CoverFlow first came out in iTunes, I said at that time, Apple is going to do some kind of touchscreen tablet because CoverFlow is just made for that. Just flipping across certain things. Well, of course, we have that on trackpads for the MacBooks and the MacBook Pros, and CoverFlow works with a mouse if you want to use that on a desktop and whatnot. But for the life of me, I can't figure out in iTunes here, as it's loading up, watch this be one where the Wi-Fi is shut out on me here, why I don't get CoverFlow. Now I'm in the iTunes store, hit the wrong thing there, so let's go down here to iPod. It used to have CoverFlow and still do but this is not CoverFlow, no matter how you look at it, and no matter which view I want to look at things, I'm not going to get CoverFlow. This is screaming out for CoverFlow, if you ask me, but it doesn't exist here on the iPod for the iPad. Say that 5 times fast and it'll drive you crazy. So I'm really curious about that as to why that is the case. Who knows? But that seems to me to be perfect touch interface, and certainly we have a large enough screen here to just go sliding through all of our album cover art here to take a look at that. All right, so those are some things that I find interesting. Maybe you've noticed, maybe you haven't. This thing is just a fingerprint magnet. I think it sucks them out of the air, or from any adjacent surface anywhere around. I like this a lot. I like this a lot in the context of it's a Generation 1 device that offers a lot of promise. I'm anxious to see what other folks who are going to be manufacturing tablets are going to do. We know there's some Android tablets coming. We know the HP Slate is coming. That's based on Windows 7. We know that we're going to be seeing over the next several years, unless these tablet slates just fail miserably, we're going to see a lot of different kinds of these things showing up. This sets the benchmark on a number of levels. Most importantly, battery life. I was shocked and amazed that this got 10 hours plus of battery life in my usage. This came off the charger this morning at my house at about 6:30 a.m. I have used it off and on all day here at the office. Not, a lot, not heavily as far as that's concerned, but I've used it quite a bit. I've got 68% battery left, and it is 8:19 in the evening as I'm recording this. So over 12 hours here with this. Of course, it's, putting itself to sleep and that kind of thing to deal with that, but, that's pretty remarkable. In past days where I have used this more, as I've gotten through the evening, and I have yet to see this drop below 38%. That's pretty remarkable to me. That benchmark is going to define so many other tablets or slates that are coming out this year and in years forward. Now, we don't know what this means when the 3G version of this, remember this is the Wi-Fi only version, makes its debut. I'm anxious to see what that radio does and how much of that long battery life it chews up, because unless you turn it off, it's going to always be searching to a certain degree for that cell tower to give you that connection. A friend of mine just ordered one of those, so I'm anxious to see what happens when she gets that in. But whether it's the HP Slate or whether it's any of these Android tablets, any of these things that we're looking at here, Apple has raised the bar, if nothing else, on battery life, because being able to pick this up in the morning and go all day long, return home at night, plug it in and do the same thing day in, day out, is something that those of us in the tablet PC community have, it's been a holy grail. We loved our early tablet PCs that got just miserable battery life. We gladly plugged in gigantic batteries into the back of our tablet PCs and increased the weight of them so that we could get, 3.5 to 4 to 5 hours as the generations went along with those things. We were thrilled with with processors that ate up lower voltage that gave us that, even though it decreased performance. You certainly don't have any performance decrease here. This thing is snappy and fast on everything that you're trying to accomplish. So that's a benchmark that Apple has set that I think is going to define so much about these other tablets and slates that we're going to be seeing. Of course, the other part of that is the price point. $499, 16 gigabytes. That's huge as far as I'm concerned, and it basically sets the price mark at $500. Sure, you can go up if you've got some other features and other things that you're doing, cameras and this and the other, and I think we're looking at $549 for the starting model on the HP Slate or something like that. So that's in the ballpark there, but $500 is what we're looking at for these devices. All right, well, that's going to talk about a lot of this in the review that I'm going to be writing up about this, but just wanted to share some of this on video with you. I hope you've enjoyed this Ink Show. A lot of people are saying, should I get one, should I get one? I bought this because I wanted to review it for our GBM readers and viewers and listeners out there, and so that I could see what this first slate that's really on the market was going to be all about. You have the luxury, assuming that you can get to an Apple store, of going to one and putting your hands on this device. I highly recommend that you do so. This is a personal device. I still haven't figured out what it means to me in terms of my workflow, my play flow, or anything like that. Again, I'm still wrapping my fingers around some of the concepts here in the UI. 6 months from now, after developers have had this actual device in their hands and they're not just doing their apps on a simulator, I think we're going to know a whole lot more about what the iPad really means than we know today. I've been saying wait and see, wait and see, wait and see, and talking about this and slates in general for some time now, but I still think we're in wait and see mode. One reviewer called this a tabula rasa, a blank slate, and in many ways I think that's exactly right. Again, going back to this springboard down here, that's going to tell us what each of these iPads means to each of the users who own them, as far as that's concerned. And you need to go into the store and play with this and understand how it feels to you, your hand size, how the weight feels to you. Unfortunately, I don't think you're going to have that opportunity with many of these other slates that are coming out, but here's your chance to do this before you make that decision on your own. Would I recommend that you buy one? If you got the money and you want to find out what the future's about, sure, go ahead, because it's a lot of fun. And there's something to be said for that. There's great joy in working with this device. But if you're on the fence, get to an Apple store, put it in your hands, take a look at it, because I think that's important. All right, I think that's all for this particular Ink Show. Again, I'm going to be doing several pieces on this, a special one coming up on stall surfing, but we won't go into that tonight. So this is Warner Crocker for GottaBeMobile.com, and once again I want to thank our Ink Show sponsor, Mobile Demand, makers of great rugged tablet PCs. Check them out at www.mobiledemand.com. Tell them the gang from GottaBeMobile.com sent you. We'll be happy, they'll be happy, we'll be able to keep doing these Ink Shows. And we want to thank you for tuning into this. Thank you for tuning into everything on the site, and we'll catch you on the next Ink Show. Take care.